Hello, welcome back for another installment in this series, Parsha Q&A. As I mentioned in the previous video, this is not meant to be a weekly series, but a more sporadic series based on the questions that you guys send in. And lo and behold, somebody asked a question that I thought was sufficiently interesting enough to warrant a video. Okay, this week we're doing Parshat Ve'era. That corresponds to Exodus 6, verse 2 through 9, verse 35 in your Bibles. This is for the Jewish reading cycle corresponding to the Jewish year 5779. Okay, if you find these videos to be of interest, to be of use to you, please consider subscribing to this channel. If you want updates, hit the bell. If you feel that this work or any of the other projects that I'm involved in warrant your support, please consider making a small donation via PayPal or becoming a patron via Patreon. I do have some incentives over on Patreon, various video series and whatnot that only my patrons are able to see. Okay. So without further ado, let us get to the question. So the question is based on Exodus 8, chapter 8, verses 1 through 2. In the Christian Bibles and the non-Jewish Bibles, that corresponds to verses 8, 5 through 6. The Jewish Bibles are usually numbered based on the layout of the Hebrew text. So whenever the layout of the Hebrew text indicates that a new section has begun, we will begin that, whereas the Christian Bibles tend to look at other cues in the text for how to distribute the verses. Okay, so verse 1 over here says like this: V'yomer Hashem said, El Moshe, to Moshe, Emor el Aaron, speak to Aaron, say to Aaron, Noteh et yadcho b'matecha, stretch out your hand with your staff, al naharot, on the rivers, al ha-yorim, on the canals, ve'al ha'agomim, and on the springs, on the pools, Ha'al et hatzvardim, and raise up the tzvardim, the frogs, al eretz Mitzrayim, on the land of Egypt. This is a very striking, iconic plague. So this is the one that all the kids remember. By the Passover Seder, my kids, when they were young, used to like to bounce little springy toy frogs that you could buy, like 8,000 for $1. They used to like to shoot those around. Svardim, the frogs. Okay. Bet, the next verse. V'yed Aharon et yado. So Aaron, a good soldier, he stretched out his hand. Al meme Mitzrayim, onto or over the waters of Mitzrayim. But ta'al hatzvardeya, and he brought up the frog. V'takas et eretz Mitzrayim, and it covered the land of Egypt. So the question is, and this is was what a good close reading can do for you. The question is, it says tzvardim over here, frogs. And then the very next verse it says he brought up the frog. And then in later verses it goes back to talking about frogs and not the frog. So the question is, what gives? Did he bring up frogs or did he bring up a frog? So most non-Jewish Bibles will translate this verse as frogs, but in fact it is singular. I called myself looking, and the only non-Jewish translation that translated it in the singular, I think, was Young's literal translation. But the text, you see, it does, in fact, it is singular. So that is the question. What gives? Why the switch from plural to singular? So this, again, shows what a good close read can do. And in fact, the person who noticed this is not the first to notice such a thing. Obviously, the rabbis lived with the text, so they it shouldn't be surprising that the very same question arose amongst the rabbis and various traditions as to what this means. How do we take this? Arose through those readings. So in the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud, Sanhedrin, page 67b, we have a statement of Rabbi Elazar. So here's a statement. The Ta'al Tzfardeya, the Tzfardeya came up, the Tachas et Eretz Mitzrayim, and covered over the land of Egypt. Amar Rabbi Elazar says, Tzfardeya achat haita. It was one Tzfardeya, one frog. Vehishritza, and it swarmed. Umala kol Eretz Mitzrayim, and filled all of the land of Egypt. Okay, this is the I think the Davidson translation of the Talmud. It's an older translation. This is from Sefaria.org. Okay, so you can read that. I'll leave it there for a second. Okay, so the text continues. It says, it says, so in reaction to the statement of Rabbi Elazar, they say, well, this is like a disagreement that we already have on the books concerning certain Tanoim. Again, the Tanoim are the rabbis up to the time of the Mishnah, and the Amoraim are the rabbis after the time of the Mishnah. So you're saying, Rabbi Elazar, what you have said is similar to a discussion that we already have on the books amongst the Tanaim, the older, the previous generations of rabbis. And they say like this, Rabbi Akiva, the famous Rabbi Akiva says, Sfardeya achad haita. He says, it was one frog. Umala kol Eretz Mitzrayim, and it filled all of the land of Egypt. Amar lo Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says to him, and he kind of snaps at him, and he says, Akiva, Malach etzel Haggadah. What business do you have being by Haggadah, being by Medrash, being by this sort of homiletic readings and non-literal readings? What do you have here? He says, finish up what you're saying. Don't say, stop talking. Go and concern yourself with the laws of Negoim, various wounds and things that might cause impurity, and tents, various aspects of the purity laws concerning what happens when something impure happens inside a tent. These are a hard area of law. It's especially hard because we have no temple, so it is mostly theoretical today. So that makes it an even harder area of law. So he says, go where you're needed. Don't go, stick your nose in over here with, fanciful interpretations of Scripture. Go over there and into the, get your nose back in the books and get to the legal discussions where you're needed. But while he's at it, he gives his own interpretation. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, he says, Tzvardeya echat haita. It was one frog. Sharacha lehem, and it called out to them. It croaked. In some translations, it whistled. The Jasper notes that this is an onomatopoeic word, shiracha. So it's supposed to sound kind of like the croaking of a frog. In fact, we see shirach, croak. We see that it sounds like that. Shiracha lahem, they called out to them. Vehembo, and the other frogs came. So his reading is that it was one frog that came up and sort of had this Pied Piper type effect on all the other frogs. All the other frogs followed it. Okay, so that's another reading. You could say it's a literal reading, but then maybe it's not a literal reading. It's literal reading in that it seems to address the issue of the switching between tense number from plural to singular and then back to plural. So it seems to address that. So you could say it's a literal reading in that sense. But maybe it's not a literal reading is that really what the text is talking about? Does the fact that it's singular here, does that really mean just one frog? Okay, so we'll discuss that in a second. Let me pull up the English so you can read it. Here's the English. Give you a second to read that. Pause it. Okay. Now, mind you that the bold is the actual Aramaic and Hebrew of the Talmud, and the unbolded is the words that are filled in that for you to make sense of it, because the Talmudic style is very choppy, and one who is not trained in how to read the Talmud frequently has a hard time dealing with that choppy style. So these are little fill-in words to make it flow better. Okay, so let us continue down. So we see here that this was at least this thing that the questioner brought up was at least an issue in the rabbis. This is a known issue. The questioner is not the first person to have to deal with this text. Okay, parallel discussion. If you really are interested, a parallel discussion can be found in the Medrash, in Medrash Rabbah, that collection of rabbinic midrashim. It can be found in Shemot Rabbah 10, chapter 10, section 4, 10:4. Okay, so let's go on to Rashi. So Rashi really is the first place we usually would go for such questions, but I chose to go to the older text first and to get to Rashi at the very end, because Rashi invokes the older texts, but he also makes another turn and goes to where I think is probably the most logical answer. So Rashi says, "V'tal atzvardeya." So this again is the what they call in the Hebrew the diber hamaskil, the word that we're explaining here, the diber hamaskil, and this really serves as a hyperlink back into the text of the Chumash. Okay, he says, "Svardeya achad haita." He says, there was one frog. V'hayu malkin oisa, and they hid it. The Egyptians hid it, so apparently it was a big frog, big freaky frog, and the Egyptians hid it. He matezet, and it flowed forth. Nechilim, legions upon legions, swarms upon swarms, tons of frogs came out of this frog. So he is quoting also another version from the Tanchuma, which is another collection of midrashim that they hid it, and then all the other frogs came out. So he's sort of combining, summing up all the various rabbinic texts concerning this phenomenon. Okay, so he says, Zehu midrasho. This is its midrash. It's a Gadic explanation. This is its midrashic explanation, non-literal explanation. Upshuto yesh lomar, and concerning its pshat, its literal meaning, yesh lomar, there is a say, sherutz hatzvardim, that a swarm, a swarm of svardim, kara, is said loshon yechidus, is said in a singular language. In other words, whenever we see something that's swarming, I mean a lot of creatures that are seemingly behaving of one mind, either swarming, then we call that by a singular term. So the Sfardea here is really referring to many, but the reason it's in singular is it's speaking to the sort of single-mindedness of the frogs. You know, typically speaking, frogs, they do what they do. This one's over here, this one's swimming, this one's eating, but here they were behaving in a sort of a unified way. They were of a singular mind. Therefore, this swarming, sherutz, of the frogs, hatzvardim, kara loshon yichidus, is said in a singular language. Okay, and he says, v'kein, and likewise, by the verse, hakinam, in the kinam, there were kinam. Harichisha, that's referring to a swarm of lice. They were all behaving, so to speak. I'm not sure how big a mind the lice have, but they were behaving of one mind. And he says this is similar to the words, and I'm not a French scholar, so I don't read French, so pardon me if I mispronounce this. Pedolier, belaz. This phrase, pedolier, and laz. Laz is what Rashi, it means the common language, and for the common language in Rashi's milieu was medieval French. So he is doing this. Interestingly enough, this is Rashi is one of the places that they look at for certain words that are in medieval French. Of course, they have their own texts, but occasionally they will appeal to Rashi to see what something was in his area, what the term for it was in his area. This is very linguists and people who study old languages. Okay, so he says in Old French, pedolier. That means some sort of swarming of lice. V'af, and even v'ta'al hatzvardea, there was even a term in Old French for raising up of the frog. What's that term? Grenolier belaz. Grenolier. That is the term in Old French. So what he's saying is that yes, he is known to bring midrashic interpretations, and of course he brings this midrashic interpretation that somehow there was one frog and the frog was hit and different frogs came forth. Of course, we have the version of that seems to be in line with Rabbi Akiva's view. And from above in Sanhedrin, we have Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, who says that one frog came up and somehow became sort of the maestro, guided them, and they all fell behind the lead frog, which is sort of a halfway position. It takes the text of Sfardea as singular and then deals with it and basically says that they all swarmed behind this one frog. And then we have Rashi who, after bringing that, he brings his own interpretation and says that this is just a phenomenon in language, that whenever you have creatures or things behaving of one mind, that you would, instead of saying plural, you would say it in the singular to indicate that there were a lot of things, but they seem to be one thing, and that they were all behaving the same way. And then he gives certain old French terms for this phenomenon, pedalier, meaning a ball of lice, gross, and grenouillère, meaning a swarm of frogs, or something like that. If that is not correct, then my knowledge of Old French is lacking, and somebody out there is an expert in that. Please correct me if my reading of what Rashi means there is incorrect. Okay, these texts were taken from Sefaria.org. By all means, if you are not aware of this resource, go over there and look at it. It's a wonderful resource. It takes a little while to figure out how to use it, but they have many Hebrew and English texts, Hebrew texts and their translations for many of these texts, free for the taking. They have many, the whole span of biblical and rabbinic literature. They have Aramaic and Arabic translations of the Bible. They have commentaries. They have Musar, which is ethical writing, legal writing, halacha. So their holdings run the whole gamut of Hebrew, Jewish literature, Hebrew, Aramaic, and associated Jewish languages. Okay, so let's go back. Just to sum up, Sfardim is in fact plural, and Sfardeia is in fact singular. However, according to Rashi, the Pashat, the Pshat, the simple reading, is that this is in singular because it indicates that the animals were swarming. This was a swarm of frogs, or if that is in fact how you term a large group of frogs. And this swarm of frogs were behaving in a unified manner, I guess, or else they wouldn't be a swarm. And of course, this is what's described. They'll go up into your house, they'll go into your bed, they'll go into your ovens, they'll get in your bread, they'll go into the into the Egyptians themselves. That is in fact how this plague is described in the Bible. Okay, I hope that was beneficial. By all means, if you have more questions, or if you would like to pursue this question further, feel free to contact me. If you have more questions, also feel free to contact me. I love questions if they are decent questions that pull on sort of textual traditions and might increase one's understanding of the Hebrew text. By all means, ask away. You can send me at my email address, learnhebrewbible@gmail.com. You can contact me over on Facebook, or you can just drop a question here on YouTube. Okay, thank you very much. Kol Tov, Hatzlacha Rabba. Keep learning.